because despite all rumours to the contrary, nobody tosses a dwarf. What do you mean Gimli's small? The whole point of Gimli surely is he doesn't realise he's small. And if you don't realise it, then screw the lot of them. Right, well, that's enough of that pernicious nonsense. All I can say is the surgery was very painful.
My question was about the makeup, and I know you had a really hard time with the FX makeup, and I do makeup for like small things, and I was wondering, like, do you have any advice for makeup artists if something goes wrong?
Get a proper job. We have the makeup in Lord of the Rings was astonishing, and not only were they some of the best makeup people in the world that we had, but they went on and became even greater makeup artists. The problem is not the makeup, though you will notice that in The Hobbit, the dwarves had far less makeup on than I had. Cheating little devils that they were. The problem I had with the makeup was basically, there was a full face there. You could tell that it was a lot of padding on the face because the dwarf's eyes are naturally narrower than mine, which meant that the face was wider. The one dimension, actually there are two dimensions really, but you can fake it with makeup. The two dimensions that you can't fake when you're having a composite photo, when you're having a photograph, are the distance between the center of the eyes and that distance there, I believe. But that distance can be, you could actually, with a bit of clever makeup, actually change that distance. Which is how security cameras can recognize faces, because that distance is really crucial. Well, in order to make him, we needed what was basically a latex, and it was held on by medical adhesive. Medical adhesive is hypoallergenic, it doesn't react with the skin, but it does bind to the skin. I didn't have an allergy towards the darn thing, it was simply that, you know, it's not designed to be taken off and put on a daily basis. The skin under your eye is about the thickness of 2 cigarette papers. And every time I took it took off a tiny, tiny few cells, and slowly I ended up losing all the skin around my eyes. Completely. It was wet, red, you know, that lobster red, oozy sort of stuff. I looked so hideous that my then girlfriend actually said to me, "Honey, I don't know how to say this to you, but I can't bear to look at you any longer. I've got to go back to LA." So it was a lonely time. See why dwarves don't reproduce at a very rapid rate. Anyway, yes. Anyway, there were children's presents. So, yes. So they obviously redesigned things to do the Hobbit. In fact, when I got there, I was so annoyed when I got there because, you know, I walked in expecting to see everyone in as much makeup as I had, you know, and there were only a few of them with tiny little bits of makeup on, a big stuck-on nose or something like that. And, you know, I can just imagine the studio tour, because the people who make these decisions about producing films are really not interested in the story or anything like that. They're interested in the money. See, so, hey, listen, I got this great idea. You know, Lord of the Rings made $6 billion in the studio. Listen, I got this great idea. We do The Hobbit, but we don't do it as one film. We don't do it as 2 films. We do it as a trilogy, right? Oh, that's fantastic. That's, I can see the megabucks. Okay, then, right, so we've got to get some dippy-looking young women in it, and some dishy-looking young men. What do you mean? The story is about dwarves. You mean they look like RHYS Davis? Wait a minute. Look, I tell you what, there's 13 of them. I tell you what, find 2 dishy young men and just do the minimal to keep them looking good and human. And screw the rest. Who cares about the rest of them anyway? So that's exactly, I think, what happened there. Peter Jackson actually did, at the premiere, Peter Jackson said, well, I now realize why Walt Disney decided that 7 dwarves was enough. Disney wanted to buy Lord of the Rings to make it as a movie, and Tolkien said no. And in revenge, Disney said, okay, we'll create our own story, and so it's Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. And 7 is, he was right, 7 is quite adequate for dwarfdom, really. I did get asked if I wanted to be in it, and I said, why would I want to be one of 13 when I've been one of 1? And it was a good choice, I think. Sorry. Right, somebody there, look at him. That's a dwarf's beard in the drawing there.
What was the biggest prank that you had on Lord of the Rings?
Me prank? Well, there was that moment. You may have noticed that when I flip you with a finger, it doesn't produce the hostility that such a gesture would normally do. Possibly because it looks a rather short finger. Every time I think I'm smart, I look at that and think, well, maybe not quite as smart as you think. Anyway, boys and toys, and yeah, really stupid that was. And I wasn't a boy when I did it. And that happened in my 50s, which is really dumb. Anyway, so what we did, we made a, you'll like this bit. We took a cast of this finger and made a fingertip there. So we stuck it on, and then I put a tiny little bit of red and a bit of white underneath the stuck-on bit. So I went up to the director, Peter Jackson, and I said, Peter, I've cut my finger a little bit, and I started bending it back up like that. And he said, well, John, I think you ought to get the nurse to do that, as I finally snapped it right. It's a very good, now I tell you, there's a very good trick that you guys should employ at school. This is the one to try on your teacher, but try it on your mum first. You get a matchbox, right? A matchbox. You cut a hole in the bottom, and you put your finger in it, very carefully. Then you put some cotton wool around that, and maybe a bit of red colour in it to look like blood. And you go out and say, please miss, look, I've just found this in the playground. And you slide the box open, revealing a severed finger inside. And then you wiggle it. That will guarantee you detention. You got to keep these traditions alive, my boys. This is probably the only politically correct thing that you can do these days. Maybe not, maybe it's so. It's probably going to harm or offend somebody, isn't it? Avoid litigation anyway. There. Right, so. People at this end are being terribly neglected at the moment. Yes? Yes?
As far as technically demanding movies, I know Lord of the Rings was pretty demanding, but your other films, like Shogun, the miniseries, in comparison to Lord of the Rings, how demanding was that?
Shogun was hugely demanding because we were working in Japan. The temperature was always 100 degrees. but not just the temperature, the humidity. When we were in Tokyo, I was having a shower and changing my shirt 5 times a day. And within 20 minutes of putting the shirt on, when you went outside, the shirt was wet. Now, in those days, there was a great difference in the diet of the Japanese. They were largely fish orientated in terms of their feed food, and us who are meat eaters. And the body odor of meat eaters is very different from that of fish eaters. And we had an offensive smell, which they perceived, and that was that's one of the bases of the sort of, you know, the racial animosity, I think, between the Japanese and the West that only recently has begun to be overcome. You know, we were stinky foreigners. So there was that. And I remember when we went out to sea for the first time, they built a galley specially for us. Nobody had built a galley in Japan for 300 years. They knew what they looked like, but no one had actually built one. And it was top-heavy, which meant that in this, when it wallowed in the sea, there were no waves. It was just the sunlight hitting a smooth sea, but the boat was going like that all the time. And it was a bakingly hot day. The sun was hitting the water, burning your eyeballs as it was doing it, and the boat was pitching. Now, our director, Jerry, marvelous director, he did suffer from travel sickness. So he'd taken 5 Dramamines, which meant that he was directing. Imagine this is the ground. He was like this. Okay, turn over. Action and right. Okay, got it. Let's go again. The director of photography, Chuy Elizondo, a tough guy, he was actually throwing up in between takes. Cut, go to the side of the ship, throw up. Okay, ready to go again. And one by one, every single member of the crew, every member of the cast, you could see them just wilted in the sun. You know, 8 o'clock. I mean, I was as strong as a horse. So I was 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And right in the middle of this was Richard Chamberlain, the star of the show. Now, the show was in a bad place. We'd outstayed our time in Tokyo, I think by either 3 weeks or 5 weeks. This meant there was a hole in the budget big enough to sink the Titanic, really. We were in serious trouble. Everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. And there was Chamberlain trying to be he was the star of the show. And all around him, there were people just imploring him with their eyes to quit, basically. You know, everyone, you know, we do a shake take. Richard would sit down, put an umbrella up, take his fan out, and just fan himself something. And somebody would throw up in his eye line over there, and he just turned his head aside. Just, you know, it was the greatest display of what it is to be a leading man and to keep a company together that I have ever seen. It was one of the great lessons in it. And I really do believe that if he'd actually said, oh guys, come on, this is impossible, this is above and beyond the call of duty, I do think that the show would have folded. But because he wouldn't give up, nobody else could. And the next day we came back and the same thing happened, but a little bit less. And then that followed, and slowly we acclimatized to it. But if ever you want to see an example of a leading man really leading his company, that was it. And a magnificent display of determination on his part. Just wonderful. But physically it was a very hard shoot. The earthquake sequence, we built a huge number of tunnels, covered them with boards, and placed the explosives under there so that, you know, the earthquake sequence could happen. And we'd had a lot of rain, and the pyrotechnics man, the special effects man, went under there just to check all the fuses before doing it. And the earth collapsed on him, and he was buried underneath. And if it hadn't been for the director of photography, just because the Japanese were running all over the place and this sort of thing, you know, and he just took charge of the situation and said, everyone, be quiet, stand where you are, don't move. And that was the only way we actually could discover where this guy was, so we just got him out in time. Otherwise he would have been dead. You know, sometimes these shows are really, you know, you do put your life in your hands and put your life in the hands of your fellow crew and actors. I mean, I was filming on a film set in Croatia in 2002. And they put up a 55-foot long wall, 12-foot high, and with 8 feet of Mediterranean ceramic tiles. And they tied it off against the wind onto the fenders of some trucks, and which is fine until people want to move the trucks. And I was standing there, and this high wind blew the wall on top of me. Broke my back in 5 places, broke my wrist. You know, it can sometimes be a little bit scary out there. But you